We all know defense is the key to the Islanders' success, but what will it take for them to have another strong season on the blue line? Plus, Garth Snow speaks about the departure of John Tavares, and we start our prospect watch by taking a look at Ruslan Iskakov. All that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. You can also hear us now on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just do a search for Locked On Islanders. We've got a very busy show today. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe something you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us an email at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we talk about whatever it is that's on your mind. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Isles, or you can follow me, Gil Martin, on Twitter at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders throughout the rest of the offseason. Training camp now less than a month away, whether it's hirings, firings, trade rumors, free agency, minor league signings. We'll have it all for you right here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. I wanted to start off today's show talking about defense. And look, other than goaltending, where you have the dynamic duo of Ilya Sorokin and, basically two quality goaltenders on the Islanders roster right now, between Varley and Sorokin, defense is the next strength of the team. And the combination of the two goalies plus the defensive core, even with the defense having more than, some struggles in certain areas, the Islanders finished 5th in the league in goals against. And I think they can be top 5 again this year because the goalies are back. We know that. I think both goalies now know their defined roles. And let's face it, at least 5 of the 6 defensemen, assuming everybody stays healthy, will be back this year to, be in the starting lineup and provide this team with consistent play, hopefully, on the blue line. But, every year is different. And certain things happen in the course of a season. Certain things happened last year. Let's start with this, keeping everybody relatively healthy. There's no way your top 6 defensemen are all going to play 82 games. We know that. But the amazing thing is that last year, Adam Pelech missed 21 games due to injury. And let's face facts, Pelech wasn't healthy or wasn't at his best for at least 5 to 10 games after he returned from the injury. Had to get back into shape, had to get his timing back. So, yeah, he missed 21 games, but probably was less effective in at least another 10. So, keeping Pelech healthy is definitely one thing that could help the Islanders improve their defense or at least keep it near or at the top. I mean, top 5, I'd take that again any day. I think the next thing that would be the key after keeping everybody healthy, especially Pelech and Pulock, getting Noah Dobson to improve his play in his own zone. We've talked about it so much about Dauber being able to clear the defensive zone, being able to get that transition game from defense to offense, whether he skates it out, passes it out, dumps it out, whatever the case may be. He seemed to have lost confidence, especially in the second half of the year last year. in his own zone. His play was not particularly strong. It is critical that he at least regains his confidence. I am not expecting Noah Dobson to be the next great defensive defenseman in the National Hockey League. But if he can get his confidence back and at least be average defensively and smart with the puck in transition, that will raise the stock of the Islanders defense and their transition game and improve their offense over the course of the upcoming season. So to me, that is the next big area that we need to talk about. The third thing to me is Alexander Romanov. And look, last year, Romanov, he finished with a plus 13, which basically puts him second, tied for second on the team in plus minus. And look, he was coming to the Islanders. He's still young. People don't realize that, yeah, he's been in the league a few years already, but at this point in his career, defensemen tend to take longer to develop than forwards. And Alexander Romanov is 23 years old? He is still not in his prime yet. And in the first half of the year, it was clear that Romanov was struggling a little bit with the Islanders system, which is a lot more intricate and position specific than the system he was playing in Montreal. He was getting used to his new teammates and getting used to living in New York, which had to be certainly different for him than living in Montreal. But when you add it all up, what we saw from Romanov was inconsistent in the first half, significantly better in the second half of the season. And for Alexander Romanov to play like he did in the second half of the season and maybe even build on that this year, I think that would be huge for the Islanders as far as improving or making sure that this defense remains one of the better defensive units in the National Hockey League. So definitely Romanov part of it. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on, although there are more things, and every day as we can talk about more of them on future episodes, and feel free to ask questions and comment and find out what's going on with that. But to me, somebody has to step up and claim that sixth defense spot in the lineup. It doesn't have to be settled October 14th, which is opening night. It doesn't. If we get to February 1st and somebody has emerged, whether it's Sebastian Aho, whether it's Samuel Bolduc, whether it's another player who isn't on the roster yet, Robin Salo could step up. Dennis Chalowski could have a great camp. I think it's a little soon for Calle Odelius. I don't think he's going to necessarily be here, but some of these young defensemen, somebody's got to come up and claim that sixth spot. I think ideally the Islanders would like it to be Samuel Bolduc. The question is he ready for prime time? The answer last year was almost. He was certainly looked ready most of the regular season games he played in. I believe it was 17. But in the playoffs, when the game got a little faster and a little bit more intense, Bolduc did not seem ready to assume that mantle and take that next step. So is he ready? Can Aho build on what was certainly his best season, or is this as good as he's going to be? Certainly questions abound, but to me, the key, somebody on this roster has to step up and claim that sixth defense spot and make it their own so that the Islanders are solid. And then, look, if Bolduc or Aho don't win the job out of training camp, either one of them are very solid seventh defensemen on most teams' depth charts, as long as you're not playing them, 40, 50 games a year. But to me, if you get 25 games out of whoever doesn't win the 6th spot, that's fine. They're more than capable of filling in under those circumstances. So for me, those are the top 4 keys to this defense, at least staying in or around the top 5 and maybe even performing better than it did a year ago. So hopefully we get more of those things happening than not, and we'll see how it plays out. All right, we have got more to discuss on today's show. Former Islanders GM Garth Snow spoke about John Tavares and his departure from Long Island. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Plus, Ruslan Iskakov, prospect. What is his future like? We start our prospect series. All that and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. Our next partner is AG1. It's a daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. I drink AG1 every day because I don't like taking a lot of pills, and I wanted to find one supplement that would allow me to get all the nutrition that I need. So, look, you want to eat healthy and eat well, but it's easier said than done. With AG1, you just take one delicious scoop, put it in a glass of water each day, and you get 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, all these things. And AG1 costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, but it costs less than your cold brew habit. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1. You'll get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Just go to drinkag1.com/NHL Network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL Network. Check it out. So Garth Snow, 5 years removed from being the general manager of the New York Islanders, speaking out to the New York Post about a number of things, but one of the things he definitely spoke about was the departure of John Tavares from the island. And look, I understand people were angry and frustrated, but according to Garth Snow, the word came down from management and Scott Malkin. Here's the quote from Snow in the Post. That decision by Scott Malkin was that we weren't going to trade him under any circumstances. He was totally committed to re-signing him. I think the quote I had said is, are you willing to drive the car off the cliff if you go through the season and get to free agency? He was comfortable with that. That was the bottom line. And unfortunately, very little progress was made in negotiations between Tavares and the Islanders as we got past that trade deadline and got to free agency, which is obviously July 1st. And the Islanders had set aside, according to Snow, about $10 million, but the deal never went through. Tavares, showed us that lovely pajama picture that we love so much and ended up going to play for his hometown Toronto Maple Leafs, and now he is the captain there. And here's what Garth Snow said. I feel so bad that Tavares gets trashed for something that wasn't his fault. The Islanders could have traded him if they wanted to, but that decision is made. So it's not his fault that the Islanders didn't trade him. So, again, it's really hard to blame Garth Snow because he was following the orders of his boss. It's tough to blame John Tavares. The only thing I think John Tavares could have done was be a little bit more upfront with ownership and tell them, hey, you know what? I want to explore free agency, or if I have a chance to go to the Toronto Maple Leafs, that's the team I grew up rooting for. I am going to pursue that if it becomes an option. So overall, you're looking at a situation where, this is what management decided to do, ownership, and the plan blew up in their faces. It happens. It probably was the most logical plan, and maybe some more communication between Tavares' agent and the player and the Islanders front office would have given the Islanders more of a heads up. And, if you're John Tavares, it may have also meant that the Islanders may have tried to give a little bit more money to JT in order to basically entice him to stay with the Islanders. But, when you're a hockey player and you have a chance to go back and play for the team you rooted for as a kid, a team that hasn't won a Stanley Cup since years before you were born, and where you would be the absolute hockey messiah in your hometown if you lead that team to a Stanley Cup championship for the first time in what is now, more than 50 years, you understand the pull that John Tavares had. Did he owe it to the Islanders to let them know that he really wanted to pursue free agency? Yeah, I think he probably did. Or I guess the other question is, did the Islanders ownership do their due diligence? Did they reach out to Tavares and say, hey, you know what? Talk to us. What do you want to do? How can we work this out? Maybe that's where the failure came in. But overall, the Islanders, Garth Snow basically saying, don't blame John Tavares. The decision was made by the owners, and that's why John Tavares ended up heading to Toronto as a free agent. And the Islanders got nothing in return, and that is definitely a problem. You would have hoped they would have been able to get a draft pick of some kind, a prospect, a player. They could have sent him as a rental and gotten a first-round pick and a mid-level prospect, perhaps. But I'll say this, that ship has sailed. It's been 5 years. And when you look at the situation, over the last 5 years, in the playoffs at least, the Islanders have had more success than the Maple Leafs. And yeah, John Tavares had his best individual season in his first year in Toronto, but more or less, he remains a point-a-game player. He's the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he has not been able to elevate that team when it mattered most. And the Islanders have found more success, at least in the postseason, than John Tavares and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, will this make any difference to Islander fans the next time John Tavares and the Maple Leafs come to the UBS Arena? My guess is probably not. There are players who fans get angry at for different reasons, some of them legitimate, some of them emotional. And I think that this situation, the way it played out, I think it would be great for Islander fans to just let it go a little bit and say that, okay, time to move on and just let John Tavares be John Tavares, and we're the Islanders, and we're going to, the best revenge, as they say, is living well. We're going to do better than you. We can get it done without you. But overall, I think in the future, and probably for the rest of his career, John Tavares will probably hear the Boo Birds at Islander home games every time he touches the puck. But that was the word from Garth Snow. Garth, a good guy, always enjoyed talking to him, interviewing him. He was always up front. So interesting words from Garth, who is now available now that his contract with the Islanders has been all paid out. And maybe next offseason, he gets another job at an NHL front office. We have got more to get to on today's show. We will talk about Ruslan Iskakov as we begin our player-by-player look at the Islanders prospects, the top prospects, plus our Islanders birthday of the day, a player who spent only 2 seasons or parts of 2 seasons with the Islanders in the late 2000 teens, and he's still active in the AHL today, kind of a fourth-line center. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. So let's start our look at some of the Islanders' top prospects. Always important. Prospect pool is vital, and we know if you everydayers, if you watch the show on Friday, we had the hosts of Locked On NHL Prospects, and they basically discussed that the Islanders' prospect pool was ranked dead last. They did all 32 teams across the NHL on the Locked On Podcast Network, and the Islanders were 32nd. But they broke down some of the top prospects, talked about their ceilings and their potential roles. But they didn't mention Ruslan Iskakov. And I think that was a mistake on their part. But I think the fact that Iskakov is officially listed at 5'9" and 165 pounds, and that may be a generous listing, is sort of making some people hesitate when they start talking about Iskakov's NHL possibilities. And last year, he spent his first full year in the AHL, fourth on the Bridgeport Islanders in scoring, 51 points in 69 games. Kind of got off to a fast start, slumped down the middle, picked it up again, going down the stretch. The thing about Iskakov, and it was important, I think, last year he got hurt and missed the preseason. Did not get a chance to get on the ice extensively and show the coaching staff what he could do. I think it's important for him to do that. And look, his offensive skills and the way he thinks and sees the game are quite impressive. And if you're a smaller player, it's got to be that way. You've got to be able to think the game well, be quick enough to avoid being tied up by larger defensemen and defensive players. And you've got to play a style that allows you to be effective despite your lack of size. And you've got to be able to take the physical pounding of an 82-game NHL season. Iskakov should get a look in training camp. Whether or not he makes the team remains to be seen. He probably is either a second or third line projection in the National Hockey League. But again, here's one of the keys to Ruslan Iskakov making this Islander team. And if you've been rooting for the Islanders, especially over the last 5 years, since Lou Lamoriello and then, Barry Trotz and now Lane Lambert have been running this team, what Iskakov does with the puck will be important. But what he does without the puck is going to be vital to his chances of making this hockey team. Is he able to be good enough positionally on defense? Is he going to back check? Because that has not been one of his strengths so far, both at Connecticut and in Bridgeport. He's not bad defensively. He was a +1 on a team that missed the playoffs, but he's not an elite or even a good defensive player. He has to at least be willing to play that system that is so important for the Islanders, and we have to see whether or not he can do it. He's smart. He's a good skater. His defensive game has to get better, and I think he's going to get a chance, whether he wins a job out of training camp this year or ends up filling in when somebody gets hurt for a few games here and there. If he plays well at Bridgeport and has a good training camp and makes that impression, I think this year we see Ruslan Iskakov in a New York Islanders uniform for the first time. I don't think he'll be an everyday NHLer, but I think he'll get a few games here and there. And who knows, maybe he becomes the next Hudson Fasching, where he gets into the lineup and plays well and never looks back. We have to see what he's capable of doing. Obviously, with the way the Islanders' depth chart is right now, barring any other moves or trades, more likely he comes in and plays the wing than center, because they're already stocked with 5 natural centers on this team, but we'll see what he's able to do. And I think if the Islanders can get past his size and he can play well enough positionally on defense, he may be able to find a spot in this lineup before the season is over. Time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day. And Sunday was the 32nd birthday of former Islanders center Tanner Fritz. Fritz, undrafted, 5'11", 192 pounds, a native of Grand Prairie, Alberta, spent 4 years at Ohio State, and then joined the Islanders organization for the 2015-2016 season. Played parts of 3 years with Bridgeport, actually, then came up to the Islanders for 34 games in 2017-2018, 8 more games in 2018-2019. Spent a couple more years at Bridgeport and has spent the last 2 years in the AHL with the Rangers affiliate, the Hartford Wolfpack. So far, he's played 42 career NHL games, all of them with the Islanders, 3 goals, 8 points, and 10 penalty minutes. We're going to go look back at one of his better moments of his career. We're talking about February 19th, 2018 at the Barclays Center. The Minnesota Wild, the visiting team, with Devin Dubnyk in goal. The Islanders counter with Yaroslav Halak. And in this game, Tanner Fritz scores late in the second period to pull the Islanders to within a goal. Anders Lee sets him up. It's his first career NHL goal. Unfortunately, the Islanders fall in this game by a score of 5-3. Although the goal at the time made it 4-3. And Fritz playing 13 minutes and 43 seconds, scoring on his only shot on goal. Look, Fritz was not a great offensive player at the NHL level, but he was certainly positionally sound and a solid third or fourth line player during his limited time with the New York Islanders. All right, I want to thank everyone again for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Every dayers, tomorrow on the show, we will continue our player-by-player look at some of the Islanders' top prospects. So make sure that you join us for that. Plus, we'll have all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And, of course, let's go Islanders.